Welcome back, everyone, to our Groundskeeper chat series. I am your host, Meg Kruger. I'm joined by my temporary, unofficial, hesitant co-host, Chris Bell. But I mean, we've been back to back here a few times, so it might be becoming a more permanent thing.
It doesn't feel right.
And our guest today has such an impressive resume that I have to have a cheat sheet in order to help me properly introduce him. So today we have Alpha Jones, certified sports field manager, joining us on our Groundskeeper chat. He is the director of operations of the Fayetteville Woodpeckers. He is the secretary/treasurer of our Sports Field Management Association. He is the 2023 MILB Groundskeeper of the Year. Author of the More Than Grass column in our Sports Field Management magazine, and first-time guest here to the series. So I hope I did you justice there, and I didn't miss any of your accolades. But, you know, one thing that we're really excited to have you on this series is we definitely align with our passions about talking about turf, in the sense that, you know, we really believe in advocating for inspiring the next generation, advocating for professional development, and, you know, the whole concept of being visible as groundskeepers and how that can help our job move along. And like before we started, you said you're going to have to stop me sometimes because I get long-winded and I have not taken a breath. So you could see that you're in good company. So now I will allow Alpha to say hello and introduce himself to our listeners. Welcome, Alpha.
Well, thank you. First and foremost for having me on. I know that we have been, along with Doug Schattinger, who is, I believe, technically your boss would be the right term.
For sure, our boss, definitely.
Sure, okay.
No technicality there.
Right. Yeah, but we've had several conversations between the three of us about, you know, having me on, and I think the timing has just always been the challenge. And with the work that I do with the Woodpeckers, my schedule stays pretty busy. I'd say a solid 10 months out of the year, give or take a few weeks.
Yeah, there's no off season anymore. That's for sure.
Right. That is absolutely for sure. You did, I feel, hit most of the accolades. There's probably a couple other small ones in there that not so much that I'm proud of them, just excited to be a participant. There's the Turf Grass Council of North Carolina, which is more local to the state here that I live in rather than the national aspect. So it's kind of fun being a participant at the local level as well as doing the work nationally. And then the other one that has been a big surprise as a plus to me, and I'm going to go ahead and give a quick shout out to Paula Sleifert, who suggested this one to me, is Toastmasters Club.
Oh, very cool. What's that? You're going to have to elaborate on that one. But if it's a Paula recommendation, I know it's good.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. There's very little that comes from Paula that's not good, if not great. So again, shout out to my friend. Toastmasters essentially, and I'm just going to try to sum it up, not going to quote the brochure as they say. Essentially, it's an opportunity to meet with like-minded people that are focused on improving their speech and public speaking and leadership skills.
Very cool.
Yes. So we at the club that I belong to is right here in the town where I live. So I literally travel a minute to the meeting space. And every week we do speeches. We talk about things from a leadership aspect. Everything is evaluated. That's probably the biggest surprise. Is literally as the person gives a speech, it's timed. There are specifics about what you're trying to do in that speech that are identified. Either you achieved them or didn't achieve them. And everything is talked about in a safe space way, in that you're going to get some accolades of how well you spoke and what you said. There's also going to be some suggestions for improvement. And even how you do that is evaluated.
Very cool.
So it's really cool in terms of learning how to speak. And it kind of alludes to a little bit one of the side subjects that I know we're not going to get into right now, but just in terms of your brand and how you're viewed by others. If you're putting a camera in your face, you're talking, you know, at some point. So how you sound is big, but it goes back to the professionalism part too that you mentioned in terms of the column and so forth. If you sound like you know what you're talking about, you don't have to sound intelligent. You just need to sound like you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, confident.
On the listeners. Yes, confident. Exactly.
For sure.
Well,
that sounds right up my alley.
Not knowing what we're talking about. So
what was that, Chris?
We excel at not knowing what we're talking about.
Truly, truly. Typically, we have Weston on the chats with us as well. He's
Okay.
at the Patriots Stadium this morning, but you can like see his eyes go up sometimes when I will like try and talk turf or say something, and he's like, he's never blatantly cut me off, but there's been a few times where he's like, "Yeah, you were so far from missing the mark, hitting the mark on that one."
Right.
That's awesome.
Yes, that does happen with all of us, not just you, Meg, not just you.
Well, and that Toastmasters, that sounds right up my alley. I love public speaking. It's like I just think it's so exhilarating and you get a real thrill from it. So if I
Right.
could somehow do that once a week, that would be, yeah, that would be awesome. Very
Yes.
cool. I think that's a very cool side gig.
Yes, it is. Like I said, it has been a big surprise of how much it has helped me. And the thing about being involved in something like that too is with the group. Sometimes what you bring to the table, even though you feel you're focused on yourself, actually ends up helping someone else.
Love that.
You know, so
Very cool.
that's probably one of the real pluses in there. And my upbringing, since we're kind of talking a little bit about me and how I got to where I am, I always have to bring up, the aspect of my household. Essentially, my dad is a retired pastor. My
Hmm.
mother is a retired school teacher slash administrator. So naturally, between seeing my dad speak publicly, if you will, and then of course my mom was a reading and English teacher,
Yeah.
saying things the correct way, a lot of emphasis on those types of things. And even to this day, when I say things that are a little slang, I see a kind of small picture of my mom in the back of my head saying,
Nice.
it's not how we say that, that kind of thing, and I'm very fortunate that they're still a very big part of my life. The column that you mentioned, a lot of times I will send them a draft of what I'm writing, and they'll, share their 2 cents and give me their feedback and everything. And my mom, of course, the proud mother, I think she has a copy of all of them.
Oh, that's so sweet. That's
Great.
amazing. Well, we do our Pioneers in the Field books every year for the last 5 years. And
Right.
my mom has all of them on her coffee table at home. And people will come over and be like, what is this?
Right.
Who have no idea what the industry is. So
Correct.
Debbie is, spreading the word for us, advocating for the industry on a daily basis whenever she has guests. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. I try to encourage. We get 1 or 2 copies of the Sportsfield Management magazine that you mentioned, and I try to ensure that at least one copy is on the table in the front vestibule where the reception area is at work.
Love that.
That doesn't always stay there, but we've whatever we can do to make people aware and expose the industry to them. That is
Definitely.
yes.
Well, before we dive headfirst into our nitty gritty questions, one thing that we always start with is, who are you outside of the job? What do you like to do? How do you kind of maintain that balance? Who are you with when you're happiest? Who is Alpha Jones off the field?
That's a great question. My wife would probably tell you that I'm always there, so
Mhm.
it must be something about the job. Outside of the job, though, I would probably say I'm happiest now being dad
Mhm.
slash my granddaughters. I have 3 granddaughters. Call me granddad, and of course, spending time with my wife. She loves to travel, so I've learned to love to travel, and
Very
we really
nice.
enjoy going. And of course, with the job that I have, the schedule when the season is over, that's kind of one of the first things we do is we get on a plane or in the car or do something. We go somewhere where it's just the 2 of us and kind of work on reconnecting because I kind of disappear
Yeah,
during the season. It doesn't really feel like it because I'm home most nights. But when you look at when we kind of see each other and when we don't see each other, yeah, there is some disconnect, some separation. So
of
that is
course.
something that we try to put emphasis on now.
I love
When
that.
the season is over.
Where are you guys headed next?
Uh, St. Martin.
Okay, not bad. Not
Yeah,
bad at all.
we're big fans of the Caribbean. We've been very blessed in the opportunities to go. And my wife is the first 20 years of her career was in corporate travel.
Oh,
So
very cool.
yes, so she's really smart and savvy in terms of knowing what to look for, how to shop for it, those things. And she enjoys spending that time searching for those sort of things. And naturally, I'll get a text in the middle of the day. I'm out watering the field or doing something, and the text will come through. I got the tickets. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, tickets for what?
Where are we going?
And wait a minute, how much did they cost? No, I used the mileage points, and I use this, that kind of thing. She figures out the deals, and, trips that should be easily $5,000-$6,000. We might pay, $1,500 or something.
I love that.
Yes. Yeah.
Meg is salivating. She wants
I know.
to
I was literally going to say that traveling and planning the trips is like my husband and I's love language. We love doing the same thing where we're like, we have alerts on our phone for every possible flight we would ever want to take.
Nice.
And we ended up going to Italy this past year. And it started with like him literally calling me at 5 a.m. He was up just up because he couldn't sleep. And he got a notification that like we got to Italy for $400 flights.
Nice. There you go.
Insane. And it was like just a spontaneous thing where he was like, the alert came through. He purchased the flights all before I even woke up for that day. So my boss, Chris, loves those when I come into the office, and I'm like, I think I'm going to be going.
That's where I'm going.
Right,
Chris,
right.
while you stay in Cleveland, Ohio.
Right. the exciting metropolis that Cleveland is.
Going to the office.
Right.
I love it. But yeah, no, that's definitely something that I really love to do when I'm not in the office. And I do think it's cool, though, that you guys make it a priority after the season to reconnect. I like how you phrase that. That's very cool.
Yes. Yeah, we definitely have to. There's so much going on with us. As I mentioned, the 3 granddaughters, the 2 youngest ones live here with us with my youngest daughter right now. The oldest one will be 9 next month in September, which is crazy. And then my son falls in the middle there somewhere. So we have 2 daughters on the end, and my son is in the middle, and we try to support him. He is the band director at his alma mater high school.
I love it.
Which is crazy because when he came through, the band director there at the time seemed like, he'd been there for a while, but just really felt like, oh, he's going to be here for years. And actually inspired my son to go, to go into music. And I think it's 10 years, maybe 12 years later, he's the band director at the school. And
so cool.
The history of this school and the tradition of their marching band, it's really fun watching him. And of course, we try to support him whatever we can, but he doesn't really need us. I think the phrase nowadays is killing it.
I love it.
And he's killing it. He's doing a lot of the things that we were talking about conversationally regarding that branding and being visible, things like that. And I'll brag on him just for a second. When he came to the band 2 years ago, 2.5 years, I think it is, there was less than 50 band members. And this is a school, again, traditionally, is very known for the marching band, for the whole band program. When we first moved to Durham, there were more people watching the band get into the stands after the halftime show than there were people watching the football game. That's how impressive they were.
Yeah, absolutely.
They were 100 plus strong at the time. And of course, over the years, things kind of fell off. And when he came along, I believe he was just under 50 total. And right now he's at 85 today. And will be, I think he'll make 100 band members before the football season is over.
That's great, because that's not something you can just, the next year have 100 kids. It takes a few years to build it up. So that's fantastic. Yeah. And Alfie, you make a great kind of, we'll say lesson for our younger groundskeepers who are listening, because I think with age comes wisdom, but you recognize that you work so many hours, but when you're not working, to spend some time to connect with that number one fan in your house, because you really do need to have that support at home and keep that healthy. So it's I think, without saying it, it's really good advice for those who are listening who might be newer in the industry.
Yes, 100%. It's something I had to learn the hard way. Is the easiest way to say it. Sure. And you hear the phrase nowadays, work-life balance. Which in particular, I can't say with all of them, but I know minor league baseball pretty well with the number of years I've worked in it. The schedule makes it difficult to just say, I'm going to work 8 hours and go home and do things at home. Sometimes you have to sacrifice the homestand time so that you can be home during the off weeks. And of course, there's work that goes on during the off week too. And before you know it, you're 2-3 months into the season and you still have a half a season to go. And so that's where recognizing those things and taking advantage of that week off, so to speak, becomes important. I've tried to set our off week schedule up where the homestand ends on Sunday. We might do some work Sunday after the game. So we're there Sunday night, 10, 11 o'clock. Then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're trying to take care of finishing up whatever we started, so that Thursday and Friday are more flexible. And those are the days that I encourage our events person. If you want to schedule an event for the field, try Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. That way we've wrapped up what we've done and we can flex who's there and who's not for those events. We don't need the full staff there. So, and we kind of would take turns, or sometimes dare I say, would dump it on my assistant, because that was his job, was the events. The events were his priority. And so, if there was an event, he would be there for that. But that was one way to try to work it out, other than, like I said, season's over, going on vacation.
Yep, definitely. Well, and so to take it back to the very beginning, you mentioned how your son was greatly influenced by the band director. How did turf come on your radar? Was there somebody like that in your life that, inspired you to choose this as a career, or how did it really all begin for you?
There's a very long story to that explanation. And I'll try to break it down into segments. When I first graduated high school, my guidance counselor encouraged me to read a book and take an assessment called "What Color Is Your Parachute?" The book is still around, surprisingly, but essentially the assessment told me that I had a strong interest in technology, which I wanted to work in computers. I wanted to either build them or program them. The other one was agriculture. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. I grew up in the suburbs of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm thinking, where is this agriculture coming? Had no clue at the time, but looking back, I can now see it. My father and his father both always had a garden in the yard. My grandfather had enough land that was his job, seriously, in terms of his retirement. He grew more than enough for the family. When we would go to visit, the trunk of the car would get packed with a couple of coolers, and he sold a lot of it, and gave a lot of it away to people in the neighborhood, that kind of thing. And so my dad would have one in the backyard, and he would always ask for help, but being a 12-year-old kid, I'm doing whatever instead of doing what he's asking me to do, of course. So that, I think that's where some of it came from, but it grew into, when I first moved to North Carolina, I had a landscaping business.
Okay.
I grew that from scratch, and after 12 years of doing it, I sold off the business and took a job as the head grounds person for a private school in Durham. Knew nothing about sports field management at the time, was pretty knowledgeable from a landscape perspective, could identify plants by their bark and leaves and understood fertilizers and things like that. But grass, knew a little bit about grass, but nothing about managing sports fields. So my boss at this school said, "We've made a connection with the local minor league team. We want you to go over and talk with that person, and he's going to help you understand a little bit more about managing the baseball fields and stuff like that." Some of your listeners may know him. His name is Jimmy Simpson. And that was in 2002, and this is 2024. And he and I are still best friends to this day.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. And what was really fascinating was first and foremost, Jimmy and I are a good 10 years, maybe 15 years apart. I'm a little bit older than he is.
Okay.
But I walk into this office, and here's this person who, working as the head groundskeeper for a AAA baseball team, going to school full time at the same time. He's literally going to class, leaving class, coming to the stadium, staying there late, getting up the next morning and starting all over again. So that was, and then of course his passion for what we do. By the time he and I finished talking 2.5 hours later, I was filling out an application to work part-time.
I love it. Wow.
That's kind of where it all started in terms of, doing it, because the thing that I realized while I was talking to him is what we talked about earlier. It's like, I get to be around baseball. And baseball is a sport that I loved growing up, even though I grew up in Western Pennsylvania where, football is king, so to speak. I always thought, playing high school ball and everything, I might have a shot at playing pro ball. Mm-hmm. Had a couple of tryouts where they basically said, you might want to think about your life's work now instead of waiting. Baseball's not going to be your thing. You have some talent, but it's not what we're looking for. It was that kind of thing. So working there at the Bulls with Jimmy, I was around, up and coming baseball players and some who were, they're rehabbing and things like that. So that's kind of where it all started. And I started seeing the correlation between the landscaping aspect and taking care of sports fields. There are a lot of differences, but there are some similarities there too. So that's probably it in a nutshell. I probably give Jimmy the most credit for that. And naturally there are some other people along the way, but it started with him.
How cool. And I think you hit on a point that, is what keeps a lot of people in this industry or gets them hooked is that friendship element that, we were just talking with Weston about, his routes to turf story and how he said, once he was in the industry, all of his friends and friendships were ingrained in this job. So the thought of ever leaving it caused a lot of anxiety, because it's like all my relationships are ingrained in this job. And I can say like, I've only been in it for 5 years now, but so many of the people I would consider my really good friends I've met through this gig. So it'd be so hard to just go to a completely new industry and leave those behind. Right. So it's a nice way that we kind of trap people into the sports field management industry is where it's like, you will have no friends if you leave.
Right. Yes. No, I've been very fortunate in terms of being in the industry. I've made a lot of friends. Some through direct connection with Jimmy, have made some of my own through other opportunities as well. But like you said, a lot of them are here in this industry. And I look back at, all the different jobs that I've had since working with the Bulls. Jimmy was there only a year. I think it was a year and a half. And then he left to go to South Carolina. And so we had a new head groundskeeper, Scott Strickland, who he and I are still, in contact, pretty consistently. Cameron Brindle came in after him, and he, I can call Cameron and say, hey, Cam, I need a bag of this or that, because he's still with Durham. And even though we're in Fayetteville, which is like 2 hours away, if I need it, he's there to help me out, and I try to do the same for him, but I think I'm probably the one who's always calling and asking. I don't think he's calling and asking me for stuff. So, but there's just so many. And then being, with all the things that different jobs, like I said, that I've had, the list is pretty long when I start thinking about who's in my contact list that I actually still message with and things like that, and try my best to connect those people with each other. And again, as we said earlier, anybody new coming into the industry, that's one of the first things I think of, like, where are you going? Okay, you're going there. I know a couple of people in that area that might be able to connect with you. And definitely. I love this story. I'll give a quick side story on that. Abby McNeil and Sun Roseline. Of course, I know them. We've known each other for several years. In fact, Abby was here in North Carolina for a couple of years. My son decided, I think it was last summer or 2 summers ago, I forget which, but he wanted to go somewhere and said, Dad, I'm going to take a trip, and I think I'm going to go to Denver, Colorado. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. I said, well, I have a couple of friends in that area. Why don't I reach out to them and see what they suggest? My phone blew up when I texted both of them. They kept sending me all these suggestions. And of course, he was only there for a few days, but he was able to, actually do some of the things that they recommended. They live in the area. They know the area. He had a great time, but, and I think, I can't remember if it was Son or Abby, but one of the two actually texted with him while he was there, just to kind of make sure things were going the way he wanted to, that sort of thing. And both of them are just relationships that developed from being in the industry,
Yeah. Those are two that like make my ears perk up, because same thing. I got engaged with them very early on, in how pivotal both of them have been. Not only for my love of Colorado, but for my time in the industry, because I've definitely had similar text exchanges with them where they're like, oh, you got to go here and you got to go there. And now it's a yearly trip where it's like, we've got to now my husband wants to move there. So he's,
wow.
He wants to be neighbors with one of them.
I can see that. I can see that. Yeah. Abby definitely has an interesting lifestyle in terms of just the things that she does. You know, she's a big reader and she likes to get out and see things and so forth. So I could see that with her. And, you know, Sana, I don't know. I mean, I think she'd be a good neighbor, but I think she would probably say, hey, can you take care of my lawn? Because she's like my schedule. She's at work a lot. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only time she's not at the stadium, she's probably doing an SFMA related event or a women in turf event, or she's at Red Rocks seeing a concert. So
yeah. So if you end up being her neighbor, maybe you could go in together on like a riding mower or something, and you know,
that's a good thought. I love it. All right, so we're in Durham. How did we make our way over to Fayetteville? What was the story transition there? Because you've been with them for several years now.
Yes, I've completed 5 in the midst of my 6th year in Fayetteville, and there were several stops in between. While I was part-time with the Bulls, I was full-time with the private school, and Jimmy was in South Carolina. When he came back, he went to work for Town of Cary.
Okay.
And called me up and said, I'm taking over the soccer park. Would you be interested in coming to work here? And next thing I know, I'm the crew lead at the what is now called Wake Med Soccer Park. I think at the time it was Coca Booth, or, you know, naming rights, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And that was kind of my thing, was working with the Bulls. It's like, oh, wow, another opportunity to work in professional sports, professional fields, things like that. So I jumped on the opportunity, gained some great experience there. When I left there, I basically was working with the Bulls all this time, part-time. So, you know, as I'm giving this, just know that I'm working part-time with the Bulls all the time. Went to school for a little bit, finished a year of law school, and realized the challenge of trying to work and have family and go to school and all that was a bit much. So went back to working again, this time full-time with the Bulls.
Okay.
I was the head groundskeeper for the Durham Athletic Park. So there are 2 baseball stadiums in downtown Durham. The Durham Bulls Athletic Park is where the Bulls currently play. The DAP, as it is referred to, is where the Bulls used to play and where the movie was filmed.
Okay.
You know, so that was a really cool experience. Local college was playing their home games there. So I was flip-flopping between the 2. I was literally driving tractors through downtown Durham. They're about a mile apart. You know, all that fun stuff was going on. And again, the movie was filmed there. I think it was maybe the first week on the job. This couple walks up to the gate and says, do you mind if we come in and look around? I just want to see the seat where Susan Sarandon sat during the movie Bull Durham. And I thought about it, and I was like, okay, sure. In the 2 years that I worked there, I probably gave that opportunity, either that or actual tours, to like 50 different people.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It was kind of surreal, because I was just trying to, you know, be helpful to them, you know, do something, check off that bucket list item, I guess.
Yeah.
And probably one of the coolest experiences was the Division II NCAA championship in baseball was being played at USA Baseball in Cary. And one of the teams messaged me and said, hey, we're rolling into town a day early. We just finished watching Bull Durham. Can we come by and see the stadium? So the bus pulls up and out jumps, you know, 35, 45, how many ever players were on the team, plus like 5 coaches. And they're all just all over the stadium. And of course, I'm showing them, you know, what little bit I knew about the stadium that was a part of the movie and different things like that. So it's a really cool experience, but that happened so much there. It's amazing I got any work done. There's probably some who say I didn't get any work done, but that's a side story. But while I was working there, the college team had a road team come in, and it was Longwood University. And the 2 assistant coaches they had at the time were impressed with the work that I was doing. And, you know, it's like, man, you're doing most of this by yourself. And it's like, no, I've got a couple part-timers, that kind of thing. But they were literally asking me questions. And they said, we'd really like for you to talk to our athletic director about maintaining the field, because they were doing most of the work, and it's just too much. So I get on the phone with their athletic director and ended up consulting with them for like a year to say, you know, here's some things you could do to improve, so forth, so forth. And when that year was up, AD calls me and makes me an offer I couldn't refuse. So for 5 years, while still living in Durham, I worked in Farmville, Virginia, which is about 2.5-hour drive from where I lived in Durham.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
A daily commute?
No.
Okay.
There was some time where it was a daily commute, but what I did is rented an apartment in the area, and I would stay during the week and come home literally like every other weekend.
Okay.
Yeah. College sports, even though we were a smaller school, we were still D1, a lot of varsity sports. I had baseball, softball, soccer, field hockey, tennis, golf was there. Didn't have a lot to do with golf, but helped out a little bit here and there. So it was a busy schedule, to say the least. And there was, I was fortunate enough, one of the coaches there had a sofa bed that they were giving away. So that got put in my office, and I definitely stayed in my office overnight a few times
Nice.
to avoid that commute. And when I left Longwood, my wife and I had moved to Oxford, North Carolina, which is right just off of the border between Virginia and North Carolina by like maybe 35 minutes or something like that, and was working at a local charter school. And my wife saw the opportunity in Fayetteville pop up on something, and she said, "You should apply." And I said, No, I'm good, because I was working towards coaching baseball at the charter school. It popped up again, and she said, "You should apply." So I applied. And sure enough, I got the job, and I had just started coaching baseball. So I believe I still have the highest winning percentage at this school. I literally coached one game and had to leave after the first game, and
Nice.
we won that game. So
on the Hall of Fame.
Yes, exactly. You either can tie it or you just can't beat it. So, but that was and so here I am now commuting long distance in the other direction by 2.5 hours, because where we lived in Oxford to Fayetteville was about 2.5 hour drive. So needless to say, we relocated, and we now kind of live between Chapel Hill and Fayetteville. We're much closer to Chapel Hill than we are to Fayetteville. So I have a shorter commute. It's about an hour and 15 minutes, depending on traffic and so forth. And
are you a music guy, or do you listen to podcasts on that commute?
Both. And anybody who knows me is going to tell you Alpha loves music.
Nice.
Any and all kinds. I don't do a lot of car karaoke. I'm a musician at heart. I guess to back up, while I was in Durham, I was also serving as the drummer for the church that we belong to, and that was a job all by itself. But we won't dive into that one. But a lot of time spent on that. So I, was working as a professional musician. Love having the opportunity to sit down and play live music with other musicians. It is fun. My son and my son-in-law, I think it was Christmas, but either way, the house we lived in Durham had a nice big space over the garage, and my drum set was up there. My son-in-law, I think, had his trumpet, and my son had his keyboard, which, of course, being band director, he plays, a lot of different instruments. And I think we jammed for almost 2.5 hours straight.
I love that. Wow. How cool.
Fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was really fun. And that was probably like the only time I've really had the opportunity to truly sit down and jam with my son in particular. Certainly enjoyed it with my son-in-law too. He marched in college at the school where he went, North Carolina A&T, and my son marched in college a little bit here and there. So it's kind of in the family, I guess, the music thing. But I enjoy a good podcast too. Probably the one I listen to right now more than any is Trevor Noah.
Okay, very cool.
But love listening to him. There's a couple other ones that focus on like leadership and things like that I listen to as well. But right now, Trevor Noah is like, when I see the blue light that says there's a new episode,
you go for it.
I gotta hear it. Yeah.
I love that.
Mm-hmm. And I'll throw this out there right now. I'm working on a podcast myself that will be an expansion of the column that I'm writing. So
very
the
cool.
column, if you haven't seen it, is More Than Grass. And the emphasis on it is talking about things that go along with the people who take care of the grass. Just love the industry, love sitting down and talking shop with everybody. It doesn't matter who it is. I will sit down. We can talk about fertilizers, herbicides, clay work, insecticides, bugs, what equipment you like, what color does it have to be, all those things. My experience coming along did not include a lot of helping me understand how to supervise people.
Yep.
Or how to communicate with the people who don't know the industry, i.e. the GMs and, director of stadium ops and things like that. So that's why if you look at the articles, the emphasis is on professionalism, leadership. There's, some other ones that are up and coming that are focused on work-life balance and things like that. And it's been really fun in that some of the feedback I've had was, where was this article when I was supervising people? That kind of stuff. So really cool. So the column, of course, is great. Being in a magazine, you can only cover but so much.
Of course.
And so that's where the idea of the podcast has come from. It's in progress. We're hopefully going to start publishing some here this fall. I've got some work to catch up on. It's the easiest way to say it. But, the podcast aspect, starting my own and being a guest on podcast really just played a big role in wanting to talk about those things and really expand that opportunity. And again, that's where the emphasis on more than grass comes from. There's going to be I've established the email contact, that kind of thing, so that people can share their ideas of either telling me to shut up or, here's what I'd really like to hear you talk about, things like that. And of course, we're after the social media aspect of it as well. I believe TikTok, Instagram, and maybe Twitter. I can't recall.
Very cool.
But just want to throw some things out there that hopefully inspire some people. You may know that I am the chairperson with the Member Resources Committee with the SFMA.
Mm-hmm.
The mentorship program is one of the things that we've been working on and continuing to find ways to expand that. And part of that is just wanting to inspire people to help each other.
Definitely.
Either help or, hey, I'm new. I don't know what to do. But I don't know who to ask. First thing to do is ask questions. So, all of those things are going to be encouraging people to do those sort of things, and certainly going to expand it out from those. But those are kind of the highlights of it.
Definitely. And from reading your articles, you always have a nice anecdote that you'll share that relates to the topic. So having that longer form podcast where you can share several of those, real life experiences, talk people through how this person reacted. I can see that being really impactful. Very cool.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And one of my favorite that I've written is it includes a segment or an anecdote about my grandmother, my dad's mother.
Mm-hmm.
And that one was real fun. She was somebody, my grandparents lived in Mississippi. I grew up in Pennsylvania. So it was a 24-hour car ride.
Yeah.
And my dad was not a big fan of stopping. You stop and you get food, you get gas, and you keep going.
Mm-hmm.
It was that kind of thing. And so being able to sit down and talk with or call on the phone, because a lot of times my drive to work, I call my parents just to check in on them. And we talk about things like that. And that story about my grandmother with the insurance man and using the sprigs that he brought to establish her yard, that one was a fun conversation with my parents, so really looking forward to expanding that aspect of everything of, this, I don't know what the right word is, but expanding that brand, that part of the brand out there.
Definitely. And is it going to be guest format or is it going to be a one-man show? What are you thinking?
There's a part of me that wants to do the one-man show, but I really like talking to another person.
Of course.
Yes. So I think probably I'm hoping to do maybe about 50-50, 60-40, something like that. There are times where I'm thinking through an idea and just want to, spit my thoughts out, so to speak. But I really enjoy the conversation about it. I've actually recorded a couple of sessions already. And again, shout out to Paula Sleaford. She's one of the persons that I did that with. And we had to actually break it up into 2 episodes because we had such a great time, going back and forth and talking about different things. And I'm also hoping to bring in some, I don't know if the right way to say it is non-traditional guests.
Of course, yeah.
Want to bring in some people who are either in the industry or connected to it indirectly. Like one of the episodes, one of my test recordings, which I probably will go back and make it a full recording, is interviewing my wife in terms of the experience of being, I think the term used to be baseball widow.
Yep.
I don't know if the term is still used or not, but just talking, what's it like when I'm not here? So to speak, knowing I'm gone, knowing I'm doing the job that I'm very passionate about, and that I lose sleep over it, and the work itself just requires so many hours, and how does she support that? Of course, when I walk in the door, if I'm not careful, I'll start talking about, well, the grass did this and the equipment did that, and and so forth and so forth. And she, of course, is usually very good about listening to me. She does very rarely shuts me up, but I can kind of read the room sometimes. Okay, I need to switch gears.
Well, yeah, that point of view, I can imagine, would be invaluable to so many, just hearing from that side of things. And how they can manage it to be beneficial for them as well, not just, stick with it, the advice of like, oh, you just got to get through it. Like, hopefully have some anecdotes that, she benefited from it as well.
Yes. Yeah. The one thing I would throw out that I've kind of become, mentioning podcasts and so forth, I've kind of become a fan of John Maxwell in terms of leadership. And I'm reading his newest book, which is High Road Leadership.
Okay.
And one of the things that he expounds on there that I've had the experience of learning somewhat the hard way and from, other experiences as well, is focusing on others first. And I think that's one of the keys to getting through what we were just talking about. Is now I find myself, as I'm driving to work, questioning what could I have done better for the others in my household or in my family. What is it, as I'm approaching work, can I do for the others who I work with in terms of focusing on their needs? And then on the return trip, I'm reminding myself of the things that I thought about for those who are in my household. What is it that I can do when I get home? And it's not the big things. That's one of the things that my wife taught me and took several years to pound it into this thick head. It's the small things for her. It's not the big things. Sure, she would love for me to, say, go out and build a fence around the backyard or do something like that. Those things take time. With her job, with the grandbabies being here and things like that, just cleaning up the kitchen when I walk in the door. If the dishwasher is empty and the counter is full of dirty dishes, putting them in, making sure the kitchen doesn't have to be spotless. It just needs to be usable. She likes to cook, and of course when it's messy, she doesn't want to do that. So it's just little things like that, like I said, took a long time for me to really grasp.
Yeah, I was going to ask how long you have been married.
Well, ironically, today is 37 years.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Congrats.
But it's also very disheartening for me, who's only 7 years in, and I'm thinking I have to wait 30 more years for my husband to figure that out. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that is a tremendous amount of time. You're right. But hopefully he listens to the podcast and realizes that number one responsibility is others. Particularly as a husband, even as a person. But when you start putting other people first in your thoughts, it becomes a habit. And when it becomes a habit, it's easier to do. It's not always easy, but it is easier to do. And the thing that I've learned about giving, which is what that really is you end up being a recipient as well.
Definitely.
So that really helps. I think it encourages me. I'll put it that way. Because the cliche, of course, is if mom ain't happy, nobody's happy. But that's not necessarily true. But there is a noticeable difference when things are going well for my wife, and of course, it affects me in a positive way as well.
Of course. Yeah, we were just talking last night about how long we've got a 1.5-year-old and a 4-year-old at home and how long the days are. Like it starts at like 6 a.m. And then if you want any time for yourself, you're having to stay up really late. And it's like, it just feels sometimes like, oh, I'm a servant to the kids all day. And then it's like, if you want to spend any time with your partner, like you have to, be a servant to their needs. And then it's like, where is that time for you? But we always think like, we'll get that time once the kids are out of the house. It will come eventually. But we were just saying last night, we're like, the days are so long, but like when you look back, it's like, oh my God, we already have a 4-year-old. Like those years just went by in a blink. And how you can have that daily like gratitude or reminder that you need to be present in this time, even though those days can really drag on sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that has helped me as well, and offering this as a suggestion to, whoever listens to it, is when I wake up in the morning, I try my best to be thankful for something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And sometimes it literally is my wife is still asleep and I see her lying in the bed and I'm thankful that she's a part of my life. Or, I look around the house that I live in. I'm thankful for the house. It's not a mansion, but it's got more than one room to it, so it really serves the purpose. And sometimes I think about my friends like Jimmy or Paula or some other friends. I have a very dear friend who is a pastor of a church, and he and we try to talk every week. And it truly is, as the Bible verse says, iron sharpening iron. Some of the things that we talk about are, with each other. And sometimes it's really just listening. It's not even talking, And so when I think about that relationship in particular, I'm very thankful. And of course, it's automatic for me, at least with the children and the grandchildren, because my kids all got through high school. They're all adults now. The house was empty. Yes, Justine, I'm talking about you, in case you listen. she would smile if she heard that. I can assure you that. But, it's just those types of things, just taking a moment to be thankful, having something that you're grateful for kind of shapes the day a little bit, even, especially if you wake up and, it's that kind of day you don't really want to deal with stuff or whatever. So
I hear that.
And then I always would suggest, when you were talking about your situation, just try to find 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes another day or something where, you and your husband connect, and then 5 minutes for yourself. Kudos to moms. Moms everywhere deserve gratitude. Whether they're the best mom or not the best mom, the things that they go through, the things that they handle is impressive, and just, deserve a round of applause for getting through and keeping everybody online, because almost every mom
that.
does that. So.
Just this morning, I sent my mom a text because, I woke up intentionally much earlier than my kids woke up so that I could take a shower by myself, because that's a very rare thing.
Right.
And sure enough, my little one, like 10 minutes into my shower, I hear his little feet, and I kept closing the curtain. Like I was like, I'm going to just rinse my hair and I want to be alone. Right. Pulled the entire shower curtain and the rod off the wall.
Wow.
Makes his way into the shower.
Yep.
Is pushing me out of the way. I've got soap all in my eyes. And then I send,
oh my God.
I can't show the picture because I eventually, I did take his diaper off, but I eventually sent my mom a photo of him just sitting there with the biggest smile on his face, where he's just like so happy that he got to be with me. And I'm just like, there will never be a time, there's a very short time where he'll look at me and just be so happy that mom's there. But I was like, what a way. Like, I just wanted 5 minutes to myself, tried to, move mountains to make that happen. And somebody literally pulled the shower curtain off the wall and said, not today,
wow. Lady. So Meg, I'm gonna ask that you document that story. And
yes.
Graduates from high school, college, or gets married. That's when you bring that story back out.
I love that. Yes, a warning to his wife that she'll never have a minute of peace.
Nope. And he's a determined person.
That he is. They both are. I'm raising some stubborn, determined, ambitious children.
Right. And the fun thing about something like that, though, is as a parent with small children, you're kind of looking at them, man, they're stubborn or they're this or that, whatever. And it's, kind of getting under your skin, grating your cheese a little bit. As when they become adults, you see that very determination become something positive for them.
Yeah.
And that has been really fun as a dad with adult children. My daughters in particular, my son was always kind of, I'm going to go get things done kind of person. They all have a little bit of a lazy streak in them, who doesn't? But my daughters in particular, you say, you need to do this. And, they kind of push back or, not ready to do it. But when they do reach that point where they're, okay, it's time for me to go do what I want to do or need to do, they're like a bull in a china shop.
Yeah. Better watch out.
Exactly. Because they're going to run you over getting to whatever it is they have to do. Because at that point, they're determined not to just get it done, but do it the best way that they can. And that's been really fun as their dad, watching them accomplish that and have that be part of who they are. So just like I said, document that story. Document that story and has something to look forward to.
Well, something my dad is having a great deal of fun with is anytime growing up that we would do something, if we would snip at him or if we wouldn't do something that he asked, or if we were just being ridiculously difficult, he'd say, I'm just biding my time. Don't worry. You'll have kids someday. And every time I see him, he's just like, God is good. Payback is infinite. Like, he loves coming and seeing how my sons are just as stubborn and crazy as I was. And he loves just being like, I was patient. I bided my time and look at the fruits of my labor,
Yes.
Your kids are just as bad as you were.
Yes. Well, my dad's version of that same story at Christmas time, we would all get together. Even after I got married and moved away, we would usually get together on Christmas, especially when the kids were little, and stockings are on the fireplace or whatever. And when my oldest daughter was born, or my wife was actually pregnant with her, my parents bought a stocking and they put the name Revenger on the stocking.
Amazing.
Yes. So, the intent was that she's going to seek revenge on you for everything that you did to us.
Oh, I love that.
And she didn't do that. She didn't even come even close to the things that I did. So, of course, when my son came along, they moved the stocking over to his spot. Same
nice.
Thing. So, but my kids have, like any parent, there have been some things where it's like, what in the world are you doing? But like I said, they didn't reach the limits of the things that I did to my parents. So it was a blessing in disguise.
So when I sent you, I think when we were talking on the phone a couple weeks ago, I warned you that, we'll start with a question and we'll go way off the rails. Sure. And it might need to be a longer form series if we ever want to get to all the things we want to talk about.
Absolutely.
So I think this might be a good starting point for our first episode.
Okay.
But definitely welcome back anytime, because I would love to talk to you and dive more into that advocacy, the visibility, the professional development of it all, and really pick your brain about that. But in the meantime, until we record those episodes, everyone can go and read your column, More Than Grass. Be on the lookout for the podcast version of it as well. And look out to follow those channels on social media.
Yes. And the handle, I'll throw it out there. Hopefully I get the syntax right. The email address is morethangrass, MORTHANGRASS @gmail. And the social media handles will follow the same. They'll be at morethangrass, MORTHANGRASS.
So more without the E?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Just to clarify. Yes. Perfect.
Oh, thank you for doing that, because tendency is to want to include the E.
Of course.
That is where we're headed. Again, this fall, look for some things to really happen with that. And then in the meantime, the column in the magazine will continue. Always looking for new ideas or what's things to talk about. It's been really fun doing it. It's a little bit of work, to say the least, because just as you're starting a homestand, it's like, the deadline to get the article in is.
Of course. Yeah, a perfect storm.
Yes. So there have been some late nights, some early mornings, things like that. And I've picked some other people's brains, to kind of help fuel some of the thoughts. And books like the book I was just mentioning earlier from John Maxwell and some of the other authors that I enjoy reading have been resources as well. So
amazing. And I think there could be real value in you hosting your own Toastmasters class at a conference and helping people through just, they may not be doing public speaking,
right,
at a conference or on the grand scheme, but like you said, even getting in front of a GM or a money mover and being confident in your speech, how invaluable that is for groundskeepers to really, help justify their bottom line and what have you.
Absolutely. Because I equate it to, and I won't dive too deep in it, but I essentially equate it to when you go to a foreign country. I'm bilingual in Spanish, and my experience of going to Mexico when I was first learning how to speak Spanish, I got so much appreciation from the folks who lived in the town and the restaurants that I visited because I was trying to speak their language.
Yeah.
And I highly recommend the same in terms of figuring out what's the language of your GM, what's the language of your finance person, whoever it is that you need to get the point across to. So don't go in there speaking Sportsville management language.
Yeah.
You have to figure out how to say what they understand and tie the two together.
Yep. And what matters to them for sure.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alpha. It's been an absolute treat. And like I said, I think there's much more to come from this conversation that I look forward to. And thank you, Chris, as always, for joining us.
Absolutely.
Here's your chance to introduce yourself.
Good chatting with you, Alpha, and listening to your story.
Likewise. And I would gladly come back. The season's over after next week, so let's put something on the books.
Definitely. I'll reach out. Welcome back anytime.
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
You all do the same.
All right. Bye-bye.